Hello, and welcome to Pandora Astrology's All Signs Horoscope for October of 2024. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm an astrologer in private practice in the San Francisco Bay Area since 1992. This horoscope is geared toward your sun sign as shown in your birth date, and all signs will be mentioned here. In this horoscope, you'll learn how the movements of the planets affect your sun sign this month, and where your sun sign appears, you will feel the transit that I'm talking about. And if you find your birth date in any section, you'll really feel the transits I'm talking about. I'll tell you how to take advantage of these transits, how to cope with them when they're difficult, and how to turn them out in the very best possible way, especially if they're smooth. Today, I'm going to tell you about the solar eclipse in Libra happening at the beginning of October, along with the signs and birth dates that will struggle with it the most, and also the ones that will have an easier time with it. Then I'll talk about Chiron, which is traveling retrograde, meaning backwards, through Aries right now. And I'll tell you which signs and birth dates will benefit from this healing journey and which will be struggling with it. Then I'll mention Uranus, which I discussed last month, but is having some fresh trigger dates this month. And finally, I'll talk about Saturn, which also has some fresh trigger dates, and most of them are supportive, not stressful. Be sure to listen for your sun sign and birth date, because that's how you'll know the information is specifically for you. But also, please be aware that if your birth date does not appear in this horoscope, and yet you are feeling the planetary transit I'm describing, there is probably a real concrete reason for the experience that you're having. It may not be due to your sun sign, but that's only one small part of who you are, and chances are good that something else in your chart, like the moon or Venus or Mars, is in fact being affected. You can find out more in a reading with me, and there's a link for that in the description below. Let's jump in. I want to begin with the solar eclipse in Libra, which happens on October 2nd. Eclipses happen every 6 months, usually in pairs, one solar and one lunar, not always in that order. This is a solar eclipse in Libra. It's the second one of this set. And a solar eclipse means it's an eclipse of the sun. And it's happening on October 2nd. The lunar eclipse happened last month on September 17th, and I talked about it in last month's All Signs horoscope. Here are the details of this eclipse. I'm going to tell you these things briefly because there's so much more depth of information in the video I made about it called Autumn 2024 Eclipses, and I'll show you how to get there if you want to watch that. But for now, the main thing about an eclipse is an eclipse shows us our shadow. This is a Jungian term. That's Jungian psychology is really related to astrology. And Jung distinguished the archetypes of the collective unconscious, and among them is this idea of shadow, that part of ourselves, that part of our psychology that we really don't like to look at, that hangs out behind us, just out of view. And eclipses really bring this up to the surface, where we can see it, where we're forced to look at it. And now a couple of more specific points about this eclipse. First of all, it's a solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse, which means that its effect will be more physical and less emotional, more external, less internal, more behavioral, and less intuitive. So what I mean by that is that you will be forced to look at your shadow through how you behave. And that's how you know if you're being impacted by this eclipse. If you find yourself doing something that just doesn't feel like it's the usual you, or somebody else in your life is behaving out of their shadow material and not out of the everyday conscious self that you may be more familiar with. So under a solar eclipse, watch for behavior that is driven by unexpressed, unconscious shadow material within yourself or other people around you. Now, I want to add that secondly, this is an annular eclipse, which means it's kind of medium in its potency, not super strong, not really weak, not like a total eclipse, which is more intense, just kind of medium. And thirdly, it's happening at the south node, and so it's about releasing. The north node is about initializing. The south node is about releasing, letting go, sometimes having stuff come up that extends back into past lives, but is emerging in this one and ready to be released and ready to move on. And so you may do a behavior or experience somebody in your life doing a behavior that just seems like, wow, this isn't the everyday you. This is an unconscious you. This is driven by a past, somebody that you used to be in another life, perhaps. And so using this as an opportunity to release and let go of bad past life, old habits, this is a really great use of an eclipse. Now, the fourth point I want to make about this eclipse is that it features a grand cross. And so it's quite stressful. There are several planets engaged with this eclipse that are all engaged in a big argument, stressing each other out and stressing out anybody who's caught in the crossfire of this eclipse. And that might be you. And let's take a look at the dates for this. Eclipses are intense but brief transits if they impact you at all. It's definitely possible to get through an eclipse with little to no effect. But when you do feel it, it's usually pretty pointed and also short-lived. So you'll feel this solar eclipse briefly over about 4 to 5 days from as early as 2 days before, around September 30th. And it will peak on October 2nd, late in the day, especially if you're on the East Coast of the United States or in Europe. And then it will fade out by the 4th of October. And then there will usually be an after echo at the same kind of moon 3 cycles later. Now, this being a solar eclipse, it's built on a new moon. And so you want to watch for repeat themes emerging at the next new moon 3 cycles out. That's coming on December 30th. You might even want to put this in your calendar. December 30th, if you had a big experience during the October 2nd solar eclipse, there can be an after echo of all of this on December 30th for you. The effects of an eclipse end at the next eclipse of the same type that replaces it. And that happens 6 cycles afterward. In this case, that will be a solar eclipse on March 29th, 2025. So you can look forward to that. So I'm saying that we have 2 eclipse seasons each year, with a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse in each season. The solar eclipse resets the vibe set by the previous solar eclipse, and the lunar eclipse resets the previous lunar eclipse vibe from 6 months before. So I'm saying that we usually have 2 eclipse seasons each year, with a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse in each season. The solar eclipse resets the vibe set by the previous solar eclipse 6 months before, 6 cycles before, really. And the lunar eclipse resets the previous lunar eclipse. Now, who's going to feel this eclipse? Well, certainly people with their sun in a cardinal sign will feel it, which means Librans, Capricorns, Arians, and Cancers. So if one of those is your sun sign, or if one of those signs is featured in a big way in your chart, maybe you've got a cluster of planets in that sign. Maybe it's your moon, maybe it's your rising sign. Then you're likely to feel something from this eclipse. Now, there are going to be some birthdays that are most especially targeted by this eclipse. These birthdays most especially will be impacted, and also the dates up to 5 days before and 5 days after. Because if your birthday is here on this page, this eclipse will feel particularly personal and probably pretty stressful for you. So that would be October 2nd, December 31st, March 30th, July 1st. And these dates, you can think of them as like the bullseye on an archery target. The closer your birthday is to a date listed here, the more likely this eclipse will impact you powerfully. If your birthday is 5 days away on either side, it will impact you, but not as strongly. So impact gets stronger the closer your birthday is to these exact dates. But please also remember that even if your birthday is not listed here, you might still feel this transit to something in your chart other than your sun. As I mentioned, your moon, your rising, something that you have in Libra. And if you do notice interesting events swirling around you during this eclipse, then it's extremely likely it has indeed impacted something in your chart. Now, this eclipse also stands to support some signs. Some signs are going to be positioned to get easy benefits from this eclipse, despite how stressful the eclipse is itself. You might feel positive effects from this eclipse if you are a Gemini, Aquarius, Leo, or a Sag. So you might actually feel it in a positive, supportive, harmonious way. And it's more likely if your birthday is listed here, or if you were born up to 5 days on either side of these dates: May 31st, January 30th, August 2nd, December 2nd. The more precise an eclipse is for you, by hitting the center of the birthday target, the more likely it is to be accompanied by dramatic and memorable events. And if your chart connects with this eclipse in a harmonious way, then you may be able to turn the events to your advantage. So let's think about that for a minute. Let's say you're having a harmonious connection to a really stressful eclipse. This one is moderately strong, as I mentioned before. It's not, total or anything like that, but it is a stressful eclipse, and it's going to bring out shadow behavior in a lot of people. And people will be doing stuff that feels like it's driven by their unconscious rather than by, their conscious mind, if you will. And yet, you can get a good experience out of all of this. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be advantaged at somebody else's disadvantage, but it might be that you see somebody behaving badly and you learn vicariously. You don't have to learn by behaving badly yourself. You can just learn by seeing what other people do. Let's also say another possible way that this can go is that you may find yourself behaving somewhat badly, but also bringing more self-awareness into the experience than you ever have before. And that may have you check your behavior, learn from your behavior, and realize that it's being driven by your unconscious, and release whatever is necessary for you to not do that thing again. And that could be great. To find out more about this eclipse and the lunar eclipse of last month, see my video about it called Autumn Eclipses 2024. It's linked in the description below. The next thing I want to talk about is Chiron. Chiron, the wounded healer, has been traveling through Aries since 2018 and will be in this sign until 2027. So Chiron will be in Aries all year and is now retrograde, like I said, traveling backwards through Aries, and will be doing so until late December. This month, there are a lot of trigger dates for Chiron. What this means is that if you're going through a Chiron transit this year, several planets will be activating it this month. So I want to answer a couple of questions here. What is Chiron? How do its transits feel? While in Aries, what has Chiron been up to? How does this feel if you're having it? And what are the heads up signs? Who should be paying attention to this? So Chiron is the wounded healer, as I mentioned, and Chiron transits tend to bring up old wounding to the surface so that it can be healed. Now, the normal human response to this is to feel like something is poking you, wounding you, or hurting you in the present moment, and to not think of how it may be connected to the past. But actually, it probably is connected to the past. It's probably just a trigger of something that happened to you before, or maybe that happened to you a long time ago, or a trauma that happened to you early, but which has also been, re-triggered and recompounded multiple times over the years. I'm a real fan of Chiron. Probably not a lot of people are, but I think that Chiron's healing process is so powerful for us humans, enabling us to release and let go of and heal and drop ballast from old pains, old wounds, old traumas that we've forgotten about, that we've kept in cold storage. When we do that, when we drop that ballast, it really releases the drag on your tail and lets you move forward and evolve with more speed and efficiency. I think this is particularly appealing to Chiron in Aries because Aries is the sign of the warrior and hero, the driver, the forceful, willful, self-determined side of us. So Chiron has been bringing up a lot of old wounds in people around things like, how are you at being assertive? Can you assert yourself and draw your own boundaries? How do you manage your anger? Are you a rageaholic? Do you just, go off half-cocked like way too easily? What about your impulses? Are you overly impulsive, or do you never know when to pull the trigger? What about your life of sport? Are you doing physical activities that support your body's health and your cardiovascular health, especially? Are you really working on your sporty life? So Chiron transits tend to bring up these kind of questions and the experiences that will trigger these kinds of questions. So you may find yourself reliving, that time you were picked on in second grade, that time that you didn't defend yourself when you should have, when you didn't defend your children and you should have, that time when you just exploded on somebody and never apologized, maybe really scared them. So a Chiron transit through Aries is a really good time to clean up exactly these sorts of things from your past and to recover your inner hero and really turn the inner grizzled, always vigilant, always war prepared warrior in you and turn that back into the innocent, faithful, and true hero within you. So Chiron is all about recovering that. So while Chiron is traveling through Aries, he is all about recovering that. So let's talk now about the birthdays affected by Chiron this month. Which signs will feel this? Well, all the cardinal signs. That means Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn will all be feeling this. And Chiron is on a 7 or 8 year journey traveling through Aries. So these cardinal signs have been impacted by Chiron for some time already. But this year in particular, these birthdays are going to be affected very specifically. And if your birthday is here, you are definitely having a Chiron transit to your sun this year. So April 9th to 13th, Aries people, Cancer people born July 10 to 15, Librans October 12 to 16, and Capricorns January 9th to 13th. But even if your birthday is not listed here, you might be feeling this transit, not to your sun necessarily, but to something different in your chart. So how does that feel? Well, it feels like an owie. It feels like a wounding. It feels like something happened that hurt me. And maybe in that moment I froze when I should have asserted myself. Maybe in that moment I exploded when I should have restrained myself. Maybe I've not been taking care of my body and I need to be doing that. I need to be more physically active. Maybe that's what it is. So these are the sorts of things that'll pop up during this transit. And how to handle it is to change your reaction to this transit. And if you find that the little kid in you that's been hurt so many times and had their boundaries crossed is in pain during this transit, that you've got to stand up for yourself more powerfully than you ever have before. You have to defend that wounded place within you. You have to learn about self-protection. You have to learn about boundaries. You have to practice drawing that line in the sand and holding it. And conversely, because it's really all about balance, if you're prone to flying into a rage, if you're prone to exploding, if you have anger issues, then this is the kind of transit that where you've really got to learn how to restrain yourself, how to manage that anger, and turn it into a more useful and positive direction for yourself and everybody who cares about you. Now, this month, I've got great news because something wonderful is happening. Jupiter is positioned to help you if you're feeling this Chiron transit. Jupiter is traveling along through Gemini and is harmoniously connecting with Chiron via an angle that we call a sextile. That means it's 1/6 of the circle away from Chiron in its position in Aries. Aries people will feel this for sure, and it will be wonderfully supportive for them, this Jupiter thing. Geminis will feel it also really strongly, and a couple of other signs besides. If you were born in any of these dates, then Jupiter is helping you through this Chiron transit this month. So if you are an Aries born April 8th to 13th, a Gemini born June 9th to 14th, a Leo born August 11th to 16th, or an Aquarius born February 7th to 12th. So again, Aries shows up here, but notice that the date span is just a little bit broader. It's April 8th to 13th. Or if you are a Gemini born June 9th to 14th, or if you are a Leo born August 11th to 16th, or Aquariuses born February 7th to 12th. What does this feel like? Jupiter brings wonderful things. Jupiter transits usually bring a sense of adventure, a feeling of expansion, a sense of hope, positivity, possibility. Jupiter helps us take a more difficult transit, such as the Chiron one, and grow from it. And we can come away feeling like a greater sense of meaning in life because of the experience that we've been through. And so Jupiter is all about resilience that way. Jupiter is helping from its position in the sign of Gemini, which strongly suggests that communication is going to be a helpful factor in the healing of whatever wounding Chiron is triggering for you right now. So Jupiter is sweeping in and saying, hey, I can help. All you need to do is talk about it. So maybe talk out that rage in a more rational way and get to what is beneath it, which might be a very angry inner child instead of an actually very angry adult in the present. So Jupiter can help you to clear that by encouraging you to talk about it. And so this month, there may be somebody in your life who pops up who encourages you to talk this out and can help you to release and heal that old wounding around anger. Now, if your situation is that you've had trouble, holding the line, holding boundaries and so forth, Jupiter can help with that too by filling you with the confidence necessary to draw that line in the sand and hold to it and keep other people on the other side of it. Jupiter brings confidence, enthusiasm, positivity, and can just make you feel like, you know what? I deserve to have boundaries, even if you've never felt that way before. So I want to add that because this transit is a harmonious one, because Jupiter is connecting with Chiron in harmonious ways, not stressful ways, that makes this connection subtle. You have to watch for it and use it deliberately because it's not going to smack you in the face. Jupiter's there to help you, but you have to seek it out. You have to look for, spot, and grab the opportunities to talk out your experience of retriggering an old wound and utilize the resources that are around you. This is not going to be a transit where somebody comes up to you and says, hey, do you want to talk about it? It's not going to be like that. But this is a really great opportunity for some healing with the help of Jupiter, as long as your eyes are open and you're looking for those opportunities. If you are feeling a Chiron transit this year, there will be dates peppered throughout the month when a faster moving planet, such as Mercury or Venus or the Sun, will activate the Chiron transit even further. And I do like to call these trigger planets. I'm using that word for Chiron transits, but trigger planets is really what I call this. A trigger can induce added stress that you can learn to turn to your advantage. Or a trigger can act as a support mechanism along easeful, harmonious lines, like I was just describing for this Jupiter connection with Chiron. And it can help you, but in ways that you might not even notice unless you were looking for it. This month, all of Chiron's triggers are stressful ones, not supportive ones. And here they are. Juno triggers Chiron during October 3rd through 16th, 2024. Juno is generally about our social networks and our primary relationships, the partnerships that are the most central to our life, such as a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, or business partner. But Juno is also a social networker. So Juno triggering this Chiron transit does suggest that you may get some help or some stress in healing your wounding from a primary partner, which can be a business partner, for example, or from somewhere in your social network. Mercury is triggering Chiron October 6th through 9th. And so during these days, look for triggers to happen in your communications or in stuff that you're learning or expressing verbally. Mercury is the god of communication. And so you may come across an idea that triggers something, brings something up for you, and there may be an opportunity to learn something there or to have a conversation about it. Mars is triggering Chiron October 9th to 19th. Mars is the action hero, the warrior and pioneer in all of us, as I mentioned, relative to Aries, because Mars rules Aries. So Mars triggering Chiron is going to double up on this theme, and it's going to really press you to defend yourself quite fiercely if you're not used to doing that, and to really check your impulses and your anger if that is what needs to happen. So that could be a pretty strong trigger right there. The sun is also triggering Chiron from October 11th to 15th. The sun is about the power of attention, the nourishing power of attention, and how when we put our attention on something, or when other people put their attention on us, it's very growthful and nourishing. So during these sun dates, October 11th to 15th, notice how you put your attention on your wounding or how other people put their attention on your wounding, and use the power of that attention to help effect a healing. Now, the final trigger here is the full moon in Aries, which is happening mid-month, October 16th to 17th. It depends on your time zone, but that's when you'll feel it the most. A full moon is really relational. It can be really emotional. Sometimes full moons bring arguments, especially if you have a partner or somebody, you know, a best friend, somebody that you're close to, that you can or tend to express emotions with. So big emotions might come up during these dates, which form a trigger to some old Chiron wounding that's up for healing right now. Remember that you can feel this even if your birth date is not listed here. And if you do feel it, go with your gut and take my advice as needed. Even if you can't track it to your sun sign, there's probably something in your chart that it's impacting. And in a reading, you can find out more about anything I'm saying in this horoscope. Here's the link to get one, and it's also in the description below. The next thing I want to tell you about is what Uranus, the rebel and revolutionary, is up to this month. Uranus is still retrograde in Taurus and bugging all you fixed signs out there. I'm sorry. And this month, there are a couple triggers of this that I want to tell you about, especially Mars, which will be triggering Uranus in a supportive way, actually. But first, if you're having a Uranus transit this year, it can feel really disruptive. You can find yourself feeling really agitated, kind of like you want to break all your toys. It's also a very cerebral transit. There are a lot of thoughts running around your head. It can activate a lot of nervous energy within you, a lot of thinking going on. But I think what interests me most about Uranus transits is that they have a tendency to bring about radical leaps. You'd notice this especially if you were having a Uranus transit to something in your financial or career life, such as your Saturn or your Ceres or your midheaven, or through your second house or your 10th house or your sixth house. A lot of different ways that that can look in your chart. But a radical leap can be a radical leap up, a radical leap down, or a radical leap sideways. And here's what I mean. A radical leap up would be, for example, if it's happening to you in your career, would be, you know, an opportunity to leap up to a new level of authority or a new title or a new pay grade that's maybe more than you're actually comfortable with, or that you wonder if you can sustain. And so you're kind of hanging onto the cliff's edge by your fingernails, hoping to crawl up onto that cliff and sustain, this new job or this new income or, even a new romance, right? Uranus can bring a relationship when it's transiting your Venus or your Juno or passing through your seventh or eighth house. So Uranus can present something that really comes from outside the box, a new idea, a new way of dating, a new partner, something that's new and inventive that kind of breaks the old way of thinking about that thing or that arena. And it can constitute a radical leap up. It can also constitute a radical leap down. Now, that might sound like something that you would never want, but it isn't even actually true. A radical leap down might be exactly what you want, and you might even find yourself getting it without realizing that it's what you wanted. When you go to work one day and find that you've just been fired and you've just been grumbling and grumpy about your job for a while, and finally you're getting your wish, which is to be downsized so that you can take your fine self somewhere where you'll actually be appreciated. So that can be what a radical leap down looks like. And it can happen unexpectedly, or you can make it happen during a Uranus transit. So Uranus transits are really times when a big change can happen more easily. And it really pays to be on top of this transit by knowing when it's happening and what arena of your life to look for it in. So then there's the radical leap sideways. The radical leap sideways is where you kind of leap off of your usual map for an area of life and onto a different map that's kind of orthogonal to that, not really connected to that, but over to the side somewhere. For example, a radical leap sideways in your career might constitute ending employment and becoming self-employed, or a radical leap sideways in your financial realm might mean that you used to garner all of your money from earned income from a job, and now you're going to open your own online store. And so you're garnering your income in a new way, which requires a whole new different set of practices and skills that you'll have to scrabble to pull yourself together around. A radical leap sideways might mean you divorce somebody and are dating somebody else in the relationship realm. So you see what I mean? It's really disruptive. It can leave your life changed for the better. It can also leave your life changed for the worse. And so being on top of a Uranus transit and really aware of it and knowing what part of your chart it's impacting is kind of important. Which signs will feel this? All the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. So if your sun sign is one of those, you're probably feeling the agitation of Uranus. I hope it's not keeping you up at night. It does have a tendency to do that. It can make it hard to sleep, literally. It can be characterized by insomnia and excess nervous energy and a tendency to take too much caffeine. If your birthday is here, you are definitely having a Uranus transit to your sun this year. So Tauruses, May 13 to 18 are going to feel this. Leos, August 15 to 20 are going to feel this. Scorpios, November 14 to 19 are going to feel this. And Aquarians, February 11th to 16th are going to feel this. But even if your birthday is not listed here, you might be feeling this transit. Your sign is likely to respond in its characteristic way. If you're a Taurus, or if the planet in your chart that's affected by Uranus is in Taurus, well, then you're likely to respond with stubbornness, an unwillingness to change, a clinging to the comfort of how things have always been. So keep that in mind, because if big changes are coming at you, there's probably not going to be a way that you can get through them smoothly by digging in your heels. Now, if you're a Leo responding in a Leo way, well, then you probably want to come through this looking good, looking like you're in command of yourself, in that shiny royal way. But it's not going to be so easy, is it? To maintain your dignity, your poise, your royal glow during this transit. And it's really important to listen to your friends, listen to your community, and take the attention off of your own ego. That will help you to get through this transit more smoothly. If you're responding in a Scorpio way, then you're probably feeling really vulnerable and powerless and like you have no control over the situation. And that is probably among the most painful of human emotions. You have my sympathy, but it's not necessarily going to help you with this transit. You've got to do the rational thing. You can't let your instincts drive you. You can't let resentment drive you during this transit. And if you want to be really liberated, Uranus is the planet for that. And it might involve being liberated from some old emotions that have become calcified and holding you back. And if you're responding in an Aquarian way, well, then you might be engaged in some knee-jerk rebellion. You may be pushing back where you don't need to, making things unnecessarily complicated. You may be retreating to your head, being cold and distant from other people. And maybe you need to have a sit-down brainstorm session with some friends or colleagues that you really trust. Here are the trigger dates for Uranus this month. There are 3 of them. Venus is triggering Uranus in a stressful way, October 11th through 15th. Mars in a supportive way, a little later in the month, October 17th to the 29th. And then Mercury is triggering Uranus stressfully, October 28th to 31st. So with Venus's trigger here, October 11th to 15th, Venus will trigger usually by means of a relationship, some kind of heart connection that you have with somebody that you care about, or somebody that you're attracted to. And a Venus transit can be solved usually through good negotiation procedures. In other words, take it from argument to dialogue. And that might be all you need to know during these trigger dates. Trigger is going to be supportive. So Mars is going to be helping with this Uranus big change project. And Mars, of course, we know from earlier in this horoscope is the action hero, the pioneer, the driver, and the assertive one. So when Mars comes in from a supportive angle to help you during a Uranus transit, Mars can provide the actions and the will, the decisiveness, and even the sheer impulse that you need to light the spark, to initialize, to pull the trigger, to get things started, to help Uranus make that change. And so Mars can be the one that flips the switch. And that can be super helpful. Now, Mercury is triggering Uranus from a stressful angle, and Mercury is the god of communication. Mercury transits can often be helped by conversations, and you can be at choice about who you converse with, who you ask for advice, and where you learn from, and where you get your information and data from that can help you to make a decision that can forward the change that Uranus wants to bring. So look for those kinds of opportunities October 28th to 31st. The last thing I want to tell you about is that Saturn is retrograde in Pisces and has a bunch of trigger dates this month. Saturn spends about 2.5 years per sign and is more than halfway through Pisces now. What is Saturn up to in Pisces? Saturn is the taskmaster. Saturn makes us work hard for what we get. Saturn is the wise elder and authority figure in all of us. And Saturn is there to remind you of the places within yourself and within your life where something is broken and need of fixing, something is not up to the mark where it should be, something needs improving, should go under construction. And Saturn will point you straight to that thing and make you work for it. But there's good news about Saturn too. which is that Saturn is a simple input-output machine. You do the work and you get the reward. Saturn's way of letting you know that there's work to be done is usually to bring a feeling of fear, a feeling of constriction and restriction, a feeling of your limitations. And if your habitual response to that is to freeze or bolt, then you're not going to get a lot out of your lifetime of Saturn transits. A much better response is to take that fear and turn it into ambition. As they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. When you do that is the magical moment when you convert it into something useful and you apply yourself, and then the fear goes away. And before you know it, you find that you are pushing through those boundaries, that you are winning, that you are succeeding, and you get rewarded. This is always the best way to respond to a Saturn transit. So Saturn in Pisces, most specifically, Saturn is an ill fit in Pisces because Saturn is very concrete. It's an earthy planet. Pisces is very woo-woo. It's a watery sign. Pisces is really otherworldly, really not with their feet on the ground. So Saturn in Pisces brings us the tough lessons, the fearful moments, the times of noticing our own inadequacies in Pisces realms. So what this means is you may have a moment of suddenly being morally or ethically checked by something in your life, the spiritual police, if you will. You may suddenly realize that your moral and ethical system is not serving you, or that you haven't been living up to it. And I want to go in another direction too, because Pisces is the sign of the artist, the visionary, the imaginative side of us, as well as the spiritual, ethical, moral, and compassionate side of us. So if you're an artist, you may find that the transit of Saturn through Pisces is really testing you on your capacity to work at your art, to practice your art, to be deliberate about how you use your imagination. A Saturn in Pisces transit can take that feeling of fear and sort of put it into a pump spray bottle and spray it all over your imagination. If your imagination is a place, that place can become clouded with fear, almost like it's metastasized all over your imaginative space. So while Saturn in Pisces is in Pisces, you might feel really superstitious, really fearful, like a free-floating anxiety, worrying about stuff and not even knowing what you're worrying about, not really being able to pin it down or put your finger on what you're worrying about. And then the key here is you need to manage your own psychology. You've got to get a hold of this fear and concentrate it some way so that you can actually grapple with it. One thing that can be a really great solution to Pisces problems is film. If you're feeling like free-floating fear, go to a movie about something that scares you so that you can concentrate that fear and actually feel it and shake it off when you leave the movie. But don't make it the kind of movie that's just going to like sort of re-trigger and compound your fears, because that is not at all helpful. Have it be the kind of movie that can help you to release your fears. So it should have a happy, inspiring ending. Please. Saturn doesn't actually want you to live in fear. Saturn's purpose is not to punish you. Saturn's purpose is to train you. Saturn wants you to learn how to cope with that feeling of free-floating anxiety, those feelings of superstition, those quirky beliefs that maybe aren't actually serving you. Saturn wants you to cope with all those things. So which signs is this a heads up for? Well, certainly the mutable signs. All the mutable signs are going to feel this: Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius. So if your sun is in any of those signs, you're probably feeling this Saturn transit, which, as I mentioned before, lasts about 2.5 years and is right in the middle of that right now. So, how that can feel to Pisces in particular is it can feel both to Pisces and Sagittarius so entrapping, so containing, so like you're just in this little tiny box and you just want to get out of it any way you can. Actually, all the mutable signs tend to react that way. Virgo maybe a little bit less so because Virgo really likes little boxes. But Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius just are itching for freedom during a transit like this. Pisces' usual habitual response is to want to escape, just kind of drift away quietly without being noticed, kind of, mysteriously disappear. Gemini's response is to try to argue their way out of it and be smarter than it. Virgo's response is to organize it and really work on it and get their hands around it that way. Sagittarius's response will be to run away and just be too cute by half and just try to charm their way out of it. Now, especially if any of these birth dates here are yours, then you'd really be feeling this Saturn transit. So if you are a Pisces born March 2 to 10, you would be feeling this. If you're a Gemini, June 2nd to 10th, you would be feeling that. If you're a Virgo born September 4th to 12th, you'd be feeling it. And Sagittarians will be feeling it if they're born December 3rd through 11th. Now, how to handle this? Well, feel the fear and do it anyway. Let the feelings of fear, of restriction, of constriction, let them coalesce. Allow that feeling of being in a box that's too small. Ask yourself, what can you do that's concrete and actual to solve the problem? Is there a goal that you can set that will solve the problem? Is there some form of structure that you could employ that would solve the problem? Now, none of these signs are really great at structure except for Virgo. Virgo can get into it, but Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, not so much. They don't really love structure, which is why this can be a really difficult transit. And the key is to remember what I said. Saturn has a reward for you on the other side. You've got to bootstrap yourself, respond with vigor, do something concrete about the situation, organize it maybe, set a goal around it, apply yourself to it, and Saturn will reward you bigly. Here are the trigger dates for Saturn this month. Saturn's trigger dates are spread out over October, and some even extend into November. Mars acts as a support to this Saturn transit during October 1st to 10th. Venus also acting as a support October 2nd to 8th. Lots of nice overlap there, right? Ceres acts as a support October 6th all the way to November 6th. So for about a month, and there's great overlap with Mars and Venus. So that's 3 planets acting in a supportive way here at the beginning of the month. And then Venus comes back later for a second round at the end of the month, delivering a stressful trigger to Saturn, October 27th to November 2nd. So while Mars is supporting this Saturn transit, Mars, remember, is the god of action. So these would be great dates for taking some form of action that can bring you out of fear and get things moving again. Now, because this is a supportive transit, a harmonious transit, Mars isn't going to make you do this. Mars is going to be available to help you with this, but you're going to have to figure out for yourself what the action is that you need to take, and you're going to need to send your energies in a better direction. But there will be resources close at hand for doing that. You just have to keep your eyes open and look for them. Venus also offers support October 2nd to 8th, and so that can mean support in the form of help from another person, help through dialogue, through relating, through partnership, through negotiation, through ambassadorship. So there may be somebody who wants to advocate for you and can help with this transit. Now, Ceres is helping also supportively. And Ceres is all about our relationship with the physical world, with our body, with our food, with our money, how we maintain ourselves physically, and how we sustain our life here on Earth through, through earning and physical stewardship of our environment, like our home and our physical selves. So Ceres has some help to offer during October 6th to November 6th. That might be in the form of helping you to organize your plans and really contain that fear. Sometimes a supportive Ceres transit can be going to get a healing massage and getting some of that fear out of your body on a massage table, or other forms of physical self-care that help you to really occupy your body and feel comfortable in your own skin. Uh, and alternatively, relative to food and eating, another really big Ceres topic, there could be help close at hand about how to eat properly, even if you're loaded with fear and anxiety because of this Saturn transit. It could just be practical help from your local Earth Mother person, somebody who's just always been there for you, is very grounded, is just a very practical, helpful person in your life. That may be the person who is there to support you at this time. And this final trigger from Venus that is coming in from a stressful angle, well, Venus is relational, so it can take the form of a dialogue, as I explained before, for Venus's supportive transit earlier in the month here, October 2nd to 8th. This one can also be characterized by dialogue and ambassadorship, but it's more likely to take the form of an argument. It's more likely to take the form of mirroring from somebody who is showing you something that you can't see alone, that you can't see by yourself without another viewpoint. So that can be the kind of thing that is introduced during these dates, October 27th to November 2nd, which can really help you to cope with the fear, make the decisions, make the plans, set the goals, and take the action necessary during the Saturn transit. Well, there you have it. A look at the most significant sky events of October 2024. I hope you enjoyed Pandora's All Signs horoscope. If you got a zinger out of this, please tell me about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear. Please like this video and share it with all your friends. If you want a real reading with a real professional astrologer, you can find me at this URL. And if you want to learn more about astrology, check out this page for upcoming workshops. And I'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.